Abstract, artificial intelligence is fundamentally disrupting traditional leadership paradigms, forcing organizations to reconsider what leadership means when machines can process information faster, generate competent outputs, and automate decisions at scale. This disruption manifests across four interconnected domains: meaning-making, identity, organizational systems, and leader development. Rather than rendering human leadership obsolete, AI clarifies what leadership has always been for: stewarding purpose, creating connection, and exercising judgment in contexts machines cannot comprehend. Drawing on organizational behavior research, developmental psychology, and case studies across technology, healthcare, and financial services sectors. This article examines how leading organizations are responding to AI-driven leadership disruption. Evidence suggests successful navigation requires shifting from expertise-based authority to inquiry-driven facilitation, from control-oriented management to adaptive systems stewardship, and from horizontal skill acquisition to vertical developmental growth. Organizations that intentionally cultivate human-centered leadership capabilities, meaning stewardship, reflective practice, distributed intelligence, and developmental capacity, position themselves to thrive amid technological transformation while preserving the irreducibly human elements that create organizational vitality and stakeholder well-being. Leadership conversations have shifted. 5 years ago, discussions centered on digital transformation roadmaps and change management frameworks. Today, senior leaders increasingly articulate something more fundamental: existential uncertainty about their role when accumulated knowledge becomes universally accessible, when decision-making speed eclipses human cognition, and when the expertise that once defined their value can be replicated by algorithms. Petriglieri, 2020. This shift reflects more than typical disruption anxiety. AI challenges foundational assumptions about leadership itself: what leaders should know, do, and care about, and what relationships between leaders and followers should look like when traditional authority sources erode. Avolio et al. 2009. Organizations investing heavily in AI integration often focus narrowly on efficiency gains and process automation while overlooking profound leadership implications that determine whether technological adoption creates value or dysfunction. Davenport and Renanke. 2018. The stakes extend beyond individual leader effectiveness. When AI reshapes work's fundamental nature, leadership gaps emerge that undermine organizational performance, employee well-being, and stakeholder trust. Organizations that fail to address these gaps risk what might be called numb efficiency, hitting metrics while hollowing out purpose, optimizing outputs while severing human connection, and achieving short-term gains while eroding long-term capability. Zuboff. 2019. This article examines four critical dimensions of AI-driven leadership disruption: meaning, identity, systems, and development, and presents evidence-based organizational responses, rather than viewing AI as a crisis requiring defensive postures. The synthesis reveals an opportunity for clarification, stripping away what machines replicate to reveal the irreducibly human leadership capabilities that create sustainable organizational value. The AI-disrupted leadership landscape: defining leadership disruption in the AI context. Leadership disruption, as explored here, differs from standard technological change. Traditional disruption involves new tools requiring skill adaptation, learning software, adopting methodologies, implementing systems. AI-driven disruption operates at a deeper level, challenging the epistemological foundations of leadership authority. Jarahi. 2018. Historically, leadership legitimacy derived from three interrelated sources: superior expertise, leaders knew more; coordination capacity, leaders orchestrated complexity humans couldn't manage individually; and decision authority, leaders possessed judgment others lacked. AI doesn't merely augment these capabilities. In specific domains, it supplants them, Brynjolfsson and McAfee, 2014. When natural language models access and synthesize information beyond any individual's capacity. When machine learning systems identify patterns invisible to human cognition. And when algorithmic decision-making outperforms expert judgment in bounded domains. The traditional leadership value proposition fractures, Manica et al. 2017. This creates what organizational scholars identify as legitimacy crises, moments when established authority sources lose credibility and new ones have not yet emerged, Suchman. 1995. State of practice, how organizations experience AI leadership disruption. Recent research reveals substantial variation in how organizations experience and respond to AI-driven leadership challenges. A multi-industry study examining AI adoption across 160 organizations found that leadership disruption manifests differently depending on organizational context. AI maturity and existing leadership cultures, Fountain et al. 2019. Technology sector organizations, particularly those with engineering-dominant cultures, report identity disruption most acutely. Technical leaders who built careers on deep domain expertise describe feeling algorithmically obsolete as systems replicate their specialized knowledge. One software engineering director noted, "I spent 15 years becoming the person everyone came to with architecture questions. Now the LLM gives better answers faster." Wilson et al. 2023. Healthcare organizations experience AI disruption primarily through meaning gaps. Clinical leaders trained to integrate patient context with medical evidence report discomfort with AI-assisted diagnosis systems that optimize accuracy while ignoring relational dimensions of care. The tension between algorithmic efficiency and human-centered medicine creates ethical complexity many physician leaders feel unprepared to navigate. Topol. 2019. Financial services firms encounter systems disruption most prominently. Traditional hierarchical decision-making structures conflict with AI systems requiring rapid iteration, distributed authority, and experimental mindsets. Risk management leaders accustomed to control-oriented governance struggle to oversee adaptive AI systems that evolve faster than policy cycles. Jagtiani and Lemieux. 2019. Across sectors, three patterns emerge consistently. First, leadership disruption intensifies as AI moves from back-office automation to frontline decision support. Second, organizations with pre-existing developmental cultures adapt more successfully than those with rigid competency frameworks. Third, the absence of intentional leadership response strategies correlates with increased employee anxiety, reduced psychological safety, and slower AI adoption rates. Reich and Krakowski. 2021. Organizational and individual consequences of AI leadership disruption. Organizational performance impacts. Leadership disruption creates measurable organizational consequences extending beyond individual discomfort. When leaders struggle to define their value amid AI adoption, organizational capabilities suffer in predictable patterns. Decision quality degradation represents the most immediate impact. Research examining AI-assisted decision-making across 340 business units found that groups lacking clear human-AI role delineation made significantly worse decisions than either humans or AI systems alone, a phenomenon researchers termed algorithm aversion meets human abdication. Dietvorst et al. 2015. When leaders cannot articulate their distinctive contribution, they either reject AI tools defensively or defer inappropriately, missing opportunities for human-machine collaboration that optimizes both pattern recognition and contextual judgment. Strategic drift emerges as a second-order consequence. A longitudinal study tracking 85 companies implementing AI-driven analytics found that organizations without explicit leadership meaning-making practices experienced 34% higher strategic inconsistency scores over 3-year periods compared to organizations with structured reflection processes. Ransbotham et al. 2020. as AI systems optimize local decisions efficiently. The absence of leaders actively integrating those decisions into coherent strategy produces organizational fragmentation, business units pursuing conflicting objectives, resource allocation misaligned with stated priorities, and customer experiences reflecting internal incoherence rather than intentional design. Innovation capacity reduction appears particularly in organizations where AI adoption proceeds without developmental leadership investment. Analysis of patent filings and product launches across technology firms revealed that companies treating AI purely as automation technology showed 23% lower innovation rates than those simultaneously investing in leader development focused on inquiry, experimentation, and adaptive capacity. Cockburn et al. 2018. The mechanism appears to involve risk tolerance, when leaders define themselves through expertise that AI threatens. They become defensive gatekeepers rather than experimental sponsors, constraining the very exploration required for AI-era competitive advantage. Talent retention challenges compound these performance impacts. Survey research across knowledge-intensive industries indicates that 47% of high-potential employees report decreased engagement when they perceive leadership as threatened by rather than curious about AI capabilities. Grattan. 2021. Organizations lose emerging talent not because AI replaces human work, but because leadership fails to articulate compelling human roles within AI-augmented environments. Individual well-being and stakeholder impacts beyond organizational metrics. AI leadership disruption affects human experiences at work in ways that matter for employee well-being, customer relationships, and broader stakeholder trust. Psychological safety erosion ranks among the most documented individual impacts. When leaders cannot confidently describe their value, they transmit anxiety that undermines team psychological safety, the shared belief that interpersonal risks are acceptable. Edmondson. 1999. Research in healthcare settings implementing AI diagnostic support found that units with developmentally prepared leaders maintained psychological safety scores, while those without experienced 28% decreases, correlating with increased medical errors, reduced learning behaviors, and higher nurse turnover. Colco. 2020. Meaning-making deficits affect employee sense of purpose. Organizational research consistently demonstrates that employees derive meaning from understanding how their work contributes to valued outcomes. Rosso et al. 2010. As AI automates tasks and reshapes roles, leaders must actively reconstruct meaning narratives. When they fail to do so, either because they cannot articulate purpose themselves or lack forums for collective sense-making, employees report increased burnout, cynicism, and intention to leave. Vuff et al. 2015. Customer and citizen experience degradation emerges as an external stakeholder consequence. Public sector research examining AI adoption in government services revealed that agencies implementing AI without corresponding leadership development experienced 19% higher citizen complaint rates and 31% lower trust scores compared to agencies pairing AI deployment with leader training in ethical judgment and empathetic communication. Wurtz et al. 2018. The pattern suggests that when leaders cannot effectively navigate AI's limitations, they fail to protect stakeholders from algorithmic harm, whether discriminatory loan denials, inappropriate benefit terminations, or dehumanizing service interactions. Inequality amplification represents a particularly troubling stakeholder impact. Leadership gaps in AI governance disproportionately harm already vulnerable populations. Analysis of algorithmic hiring systems found that companies lacking leaders equipped to interrogate AI bias implemented tools that systematically disadvantaged candidates from underrepresented backgrounds, not from intentional discrimination, but from leaders insufficiently skilled in questioning algorithmic recommendations. Rogovan et al. 2020. Evidence-based organizational responses. Organizations navigating AI leadership disruption successfully employ multifaceted responses addressing meaning, identity, systems, and development simultaneously. The following interventions draw on documented practices across industries, with attention to both theoretical mechanisms and practical implementation. Meaning stewardship through structured reflection. Effective organizations institutionalize practices that preserve space for meaning-making amid AI-driven acceleration, rather than allowing algorithmic efficiency to crowd out reflection. They deliberately slow decision processes to enable leaders and teams to connect actions with values and assess consequences that metrics cannot capture. Research on reflective practice in organizations suggests that structured reflection improves decision quality, strengthens ethical reasoning, and increases alignment between stated values and actual behaviors. Schon. 1983. In the AI context, reflection serves additional functions. It counteracts automation bias by requiring explicit interrogation of algorithmic recommendations, surfaces unarticulated assumptions embedded in training data, and maintains attention to stakeholder experiences that fall outside optimization parameters. Various approaches demonstrate effectiveness. Standing reflection protocols that require decision makers to articulate why AI recommendations align with or diverge from organizational values before implementation. This includes pause points in approval workflows, ethics checklists adapted from healthcare's surgical safety models, and red team exercises where designated skeptics challenge algorithmic logic. After-action learning sessions that examine not only what happened but what the experience meant for those involved. Adapted from military debriefing practices. These sessions explicitly include voices typically excluded from technical AI discussions, frontline workers, customers, and community representatives, ensuring reflection incorporates lived experience alongside data analysis. Narrative documentation practices that complement quantitative dashboards with qualitative accounts. Some organizations require quarterly stories of impact alongside performance metrics, asking leaders to describe specific human experiences shaped by AI-enabled decisions, both positive outcomes worth replicating and harmful consequences requiring correction. Microsoft's approach to responsible AI development provides a relevant illustration. Beyond technical fairness frameworks, the company instituted AI ethics and effects in engineering and research, review processes requiring product teams to engage with social scientists, ethicists, and community advocates throughout development cycles, not just at launch gates. These interdisciplinary reviews explicitly address meaning questions: who benefits? Who bears risk? What values the system embodies? Forcing leaders to articulate purpose beyond functionality. According to internal assessments, products undergoing these reviews showed measurably lower post-launch controversy rates and higher user trust scores than products developed under purely technical governance. Borenstein and Howard. 2021. Identity transformation from expert to facilitator. Organizations successfully navigating AI disruption help leaders reconstruct professional identity around inquiry, facilitation, and adaptive learning rather than static expertise. This involves both narrative reframing, offering new language for what leadership means, and structural support that reinforces emergent identities through role design, evaluation criteria, and development investments. Identity theory suggests that role transitions succeed when organizations provide legitimate alternative identity anchors, social validation for new behaviors, and psychological safety to experiment without competence threats. Iborra. 1999. In the AI context, this means explicitly positioning learning orientation and productive inquiry as leadership strengths rather than admissions of ignorance. Effective approaches include reframing expertise from knowing answers to asking better questions through leadership competency models that explicitly value curiosity, intellectual humility, and collaborative problem solving. This linguistic shift appears superficial but proves behaviorally significant when organizations evaluate and promote leaders based on question quality rather than answer certainty. Leadership aspirants adapt their identity accordingly, creating learner-leader roles and communities where senior leaders publicly engage in AI literacy development, model non-defensive acknowledgement of knowledge gaps, and celebrate learning velocity over static mastery. These communities normalize developmental struggle and provide peer support during identity transitions. Redesigning leadership work to emphasize facilitation, connection, and integration rather than unilateral decision-making. This includes shifting meeting norms from leader presents solution to leader orchestrates collective intelligence, repositioning one-on-ones as coaching conversations rather than status updates, and allocating leader time to cross-functional translation work that AI cannot perform. At Unilever, leadership transformation accompanied enterprise AI adoption explicitly addressed identity disruption. The company redesigned its global leadership framework around what it termed the human edge, capabilities AI cannot replicate, including empathy, ethical judgment, creative synthesis, and inspirational communication. Critically, this framework didn't dismiss technical competence but repositioned it as foundational rather than differentiating. The company then aligned its leadership assessment, promotion criteria, and executive education investments with the new framework, providing structural reinforcement for identity change. Internal surveys indicated that leaders who initially reported anxiety about AI's impact on their relevance showed significantly increased confidence and engagement after framework introduction, suggesting successful identity reconstruction. Grattan, 2021. Distributed intelligence and adaptive systems design rather than maintaining hierarchical control structures incompatible with AI's distributed cognition. Leading organizations redesign operating models around coordination, transparency, and adaptive capacity. This reflects recognition that AI shifts organizational intelligence from centralized to networked, requiring leadership approaches that guide rather than command. Organizational design research demonstrates that complex adaptive systems outperform rigid hierarchies in uncertain environments. But they require different leadership capabilities, setting boundaries rather than prescribing actions, creating feedback loops rather than controlling execution, and cultivating redundancy rather than optimizing efficiency. Wellbeing and Arena, 2018. Various implementation patterns emerge, mission command principles borrowed from military contexts, where leaders define intent and constraints but delegate execution to those closest to ground truth. In AI-augmented organizations, this means leaders articulate values, risk boundaries, and success definitions while empowering teams to determine how AI tools serve those parameters. Transparent algorithmic governance that makes AI decision logic visible across organizational levels, enabling distributed participants to understand, question, and improve systems rather than treating them as black boxes controlled by technical elites. This includes accessible model documentation, plain language explanations of algorithmic logic, and cross-functional review boards with authority to halt or modify AI deployments. Experimental structures that enable rapid learning cycles without requiring top-down approval for every iteration. Organizations implement safe-to-fail protocols where AI experiments proceed with defined risk limits, automatic rollback mechanisms, and real-time monitoring, allowing innovation without centralized bottlenecks. Nested autonomy architectures that balance local responsiveness with strategic coherence. Teams possess decision authority within their domains while coordinating through shared platforms, transparent data, and periodic integration forums. Leaders focus on interface management, ensuring team boundaries make sense, resolving conflicts between autonomous units, and maintaining alignment with enterprise strategy. J.P. Morgan Chase's approach to AI governance illustrates these principles in financial services. a heavily regulated sector where control traditionally concentrates at senior levels. The company established a distributed AI governance model featuring domain-specific AI councils with authority to approve deployments in their areas: consumer banking, asset management, risk management, while a central AI ethics board sets enterprise standards and adjudicates cross-domain conflicts. Each council includes business leaders, technologists, compliance specialists, and employee representatives, ensuring multiple perspectives shape decisions, rather than centrally reviewing every AI use case, which would create bottlenecks incompatible with innovation pace. The model distributes authority while maintaining coherence through shared principles, transparent decision criteria, and escalation protocols. According to the company's chief data and analytics officer, this structure accelerated AI adoption while improving risk management by engaging leaders closest to implementation contexts in governance decisions. Diamond 2021. Capability building through vertical development. Organizations addressing AI leadership disruption invest in developmental experiences that expand leaders' cognitive complexity rather than merely adding skills. This approach recognizes that AI-era challenges exceed the meaning-making capacity many leaders currently possess, requiring what developmental psychologists call vertical growth, qualitative shifts in how leaders think, not just what they know. Research on adult development reveals that individuals progress through increasingly complex meaning-making stages, each characterized by different capacities for handling ambiguity, integrating multiple perspectives, and questioning one's own assumptions. Keegan 1994. Most leaders operate at stages Keegan terms: socialized mind, seeking external validation, following accepted rules, or self-authoring mind, generating internal standards, pursuing self-determined goals. AI-era leadership increasingly requires self-transforming mind, capacity to hold multiple frameworks simultaneously, see limitations in one's own perspective, and remain adaptive as contexts shift. Vertical development cannot be rushed but can be intentionally supported through experiences that create productive disequilibrium, challenges that exceed current capacities without overwhelming, coupled with reflection and support that enable integration. Effective approaches include developmental assignments that place leaders in unfamiliar contexts requiring new sense-making, such as cross-industry rotations, leading initiatives outside their expertise, or assuming responsibility for AI ethics when their background is purely technical. These experiences surface assumptions and create motivation for cognitive growth. Structured perspective taking through cohort-based programs that bring together leaders from different functions, industries, and backgrounds to examine shared challenges. The developmental mechanism involves encountering genuinely different ways of thinking about problems, not just different opinions but different cognitive frameworks, which destabilizes certainty and invites complexity. Reflective practices and developmental coaching that help leaders examine their own thinking patterns, recognize when current frameworks prove inadequate, and experiment with more complex approaches. This includes journaling protocols, peer coaching circles, and professional coaching relationships explicitly focused on vertical development rather than skill acquisition or performance improvement. Action inquiry methods that teach leaders to observe their behavior in real time, recognize when their assumptions drive dysfunctional patterns, and experiment with different action logics. Research by Talbot and colleagues demonstrates that leaders trained in action inquiry show measurable increases in developmental stage and corresponding improvements in leadership effectiveness, particularly in complex, ambiguous contexts. Talbot 2004. Cleveland Clinic implemented vertical development as core AI leadership strategy when deploying AI-assisted clinical decision support across its health system, recognizing that effective AI integration required physician leaders capable of balancing algorithmic recommendations with contextual judgment. questioning both human expertise and machine logic. And navigating ethical complexity, the organization partnered with developmental researchers to create a leadership program explicitly targeting cognitive complexity. The program combined clinical AI challenges with developmental coaching, peer learning cohorts, and reflective practices. Pre-post assessments using validated developmental measures showed significant increases in participants' capacity for dialectical thinking, perspective-taking, and tolerance for paradox. More importantly, clinical units led by program graduates demonstrated higher quality AI integration, maintaining strong clinical outcomes while effectively utilizing AI tools, compared to units with technically trained but developmentally unsupported leadership, Ragupathy and Ragupathy. 2023. Purpose articulation and value alignment. Effective organizations explicitly address RO's potential to obscure purpose by implementing practices that keep what we're here to accomplish and why it matters visible amid technological acceleration. This involves more than mission statements. It requires ongoing leadership work translating abstract purpose into concrete decisions, connecting individual contributions to collective aims, and ensuring AI deployment serves rather than subverts organizational values. Research on organizational purpose demonstrates that clearly articulated, consistently reinforced purpose improves employee engagement, decision quality under uncertainty, and stakeholder trust. Quinn and Thaker. 2018. In AI contexts, purpose serves additional functions. It provides criteria for evaluating algorithmic recommendations beyond efficiency, anchors identity when expertise erodes, and offers meaning when work roles transform. Implementation approaches include values-based decision frameworks that explicitly connect AI deployment decisions to organizational purpose, rather than evaluating AI opportunities purely on efficiency or revenue potential. These frameworks require leaders to assess alignment with stated values, impact on purpose delivery, and effects on stakeholders the organization serves. Purpose integration in communication rhythms where leaders consistently connect daily work to larger organizational aims. This includes regular forums where leaders share stories illustrating purpose in action, recognize contributions that exemplify values, and interpret organizational changes through purpose lens. Stakeholder inclusion in AI governance, ensuring that those affected by AI systems participate in shaping their design and deployment. This practice grounds abstract purpose in concrete human experience and prevents algorithmic optimization from diverging from actual stakeholder needs. Purpose-driven evaluation criteria that measure organizational success multidimensionally, including purpose delivery, stakeholder well-being, and value alignment alongside financial and operational metrics. What organizations measure signals what they value. Evaluation systems that capture only efficiency inevitably drive purpose erosion. Patagonia's approach to AI integration in its supply chain operations demonstrates purpose-driven governance in practice. As the outdoor apparel company explored AI for inventory optimization and demand forecasting, it implemented decision criteria requiring that any AI deployment advance its environmental mission alongside operational goals. This meant rejecting some algorithmically optimal solutions that increased carbon footprint, even when they promised revenue gains. The company established cross-functional teams including environmental scientists, supply chain leaders, and frontline workers to evaluate AI proposals against purpose criteria. It also created transparent reporting showing how AI systems affected environmental outcomes, not just business metrics. This approach required leaders to articulate and defend purpose-aligned decisions that sometimes sacrificed short-term efficiency, modeling the kind of values-grounded judgment AI cannot provide. According to company leadership, this purpose-driven integration strengthened both employee commitment and customer trust, demonstrating that explicit values governance creates organizational resilience even when it constrains optimization. Chenard et al. 2022. Building long-term organizational capacity for AI-era leadership beyond responding to immediate disruption. Organizations building durable AI-era leadership capability invest in 3 forward-looking domains: cultivating human-centered leadership culture, designing developmental infrastructure, and establishing adaptive governance systems. Cultivating human-centered leadership culture. Long-term organizational capacity requires cultural transformation, positioning human judgment, relational capability, and ethical stewardship as core leadership competencies rather than soft skills peripheral to technical expertise. This involves shifting organizational narratives, reward systems, and social norms to validate distinctly human contributions AI cannot replicate. Research on organizational culture change demonstrates that lasting transformation requires alignment across multiple reinforcement mechanisms, stories and symbols, formal structures and systems, and leadership behavior modeling. Shine. 2010. In the AI context, this means organizations must simultaneously reshape how they talk about leadership, what they reward and promote, and how senior leaders spend their time and attention. Narrative and symbolic shifts involve introducing language that reframes human capabilities as premium rather than residual. Instead of discussing what AI can't do yet, organizations describe irreplaceable human capabilities including empathy, creativity, ethical judgment, and inspirational communication. They celebrate leaders who demonstrate these capabilities through recognition programs, case studies, and promotion announcements that highlight human skills alongside technical accomplishments. Structural reinforcement includes redesigning leadership competency models, performance evaluation criteria, and succession planning systems around human-centered capabilities. Organizations explicitly assess and develop leaders on dimensions like creates psychological safety, stewards organizational purpose, demonstrates ethical courage, and facilitates collective intelligence. Compensation and promotion decisions reflect these priorities, signaling that human leadership capabilities drive career success. Behavioral modeling by senior executives proves particularly influential. When CEOs and executive teams visibly engage in developmental learning, publicly acknowledge uncertainty, prioritize relationship investments over efficiency gains, and make decisions that sacrifice short-term optimization for long-term stakeholder well-being, they legitimate these behaviors throughout the organization. Conversely, when senior leaders claim human skills matter while personally modeling pure technical focus and efficiency obsession, culture change efforts fail. Developmental community building creates forums where leaders collectively explore AI-era leadership challenges, share experiments and learning, and provide mutual support during identity transitions. These communities, whether formal cohorts, informal networks, or online platforms, normalize developmental struggle and accelerate learning diffusion. Designing developmental infrastructure. Organizations building long-term capacity invest in infrastructure that continuously develops leadership capability rather than treating development as episodic training events. This includes creating roles, processes, and resources dedicated to ongoing leader growth across career stages. Leadership development roles and functions such as internal coaches, developmental advisors, and learning designers who partner with leaders throughout their careers. These specialists bring developmental expertise, understanding vertical growth stages, designing experiences that promote cognitive complexity, and facilitating reflective practice that most organizations lack internally. Embedded learning processes integrate development into workflow rather than segregating it in training programs. This includes structured reflection protocols following major decisions, peer coaching embedded in team meetings, and action learning projects that combine business challenges with intentional capability building. Cohort-based developmental experiences that bring together leaders at similar career stages to engage in extended learning journeys. Research demonstrates that cohort models accelerate development by creating peer communities that provide challenge, support, and alternative perspectives essential for growth. Day et al. 2014. Measurement and feedback systems that help leaders understand their current developmental capacity and track growth over time. This includes validated developmental assessments, 360-degree feedback focused on human leadership capabilities, and self-reflection tools that increase metacognitive awareness. Establishing adaptive governance for AI-human partnership. Long-term organizational capacity requires governance systems that enable humans and AI to partner effectively while protecting against algorithmic harm. This involves designing oversight mechanisms, accountability structures, and learning processes suited to AI's unique characteristics, its opacity, adaptability, and potential for unintended consequences. Algorithmic accountability frameworks that clearly define who holds responsibility for AI-enabled decisions and outcomes. Research on AI governance emphasizes that accountability cannot reside with algorithms themselves but must trace to human decision-makers with authority to deploy, monitor, modify, or discontinue AI systems. Mittelstadt et al. 2016. Continuous learning and improvement systems that enable organizations to detect algorithmic dysfunction quickly and adjust before significant harm accrues. This includes real-time monitoring for bias and unintended consequences, structured review cycles examining AI system performance against values criteria, and feedback channels allowing those affected by AI decisions to raise concerns and trigger investigation. Ethical review and oversight mechanisms that provide independent assessment of high-stakes AI deployments. Drawing on models from healthcare's institutional review boards and corporate audit committees. These bodies bring diverse expertise and stakeholder perspectives to evaluate whether AI systems align with organizational values and serve legitimate purposes. Participatory governance processes that include employees, customers, and community members in shaping AI deployment decisions. Research on algorithmic justice demonstrates that purely technical or executive governance produces systems that serve some stakeholders while harming others, whereas participatory approaches surface impacts technical experts miss and generate solutions that better serve diverse needs. Rogi et al. 2020. Conclusion: AI disrupts leadership not by rendering humans obsolete but by forcing clarity about what leadership has always been for. When machines can access information faster, process it more thoroughly, and generate competent outputs at scale, the expertise-authority control paradigm collapses. What remains, and what organizational performance and stakeholder well-being ultimately depend upon, are irreducibly human capabilities, connecting work to purpose, creating conditions for collective intelligence, exercising ethical judgment in contexts algorithms cannot comprehend, and stewarding meaning when optimization threatens to crowd it out. Organizations navigating this transition successfully don't defend outdated leadership models or treat AI purely as technical infrastructure requiring IT management. Instead, they recognize leadership disruption as an opportunity for reclamation, deliberately cultivating human capabilities that create sustainable value while letting machines handle what they do better. This requires simultaneous work across multiple dimensions. Leaders need structured practices preserving space for reflection and meaning-making amid acceleration. They need support reconstructing professional identity around inquiry and facilitation rather than static expertise. Organizations need operating models that distribute intelligence and enable adaptation rather than centralizing control. Leaders need developmental experiences expanding cognitive complexity to meet challenges exceeding current capacities. And organizations need governance systems ensuring AI serves human purposes rather than optimizing toward unintended harms. The evidence is clear: organizations making these investments demonstrate measurably better outcomes, stronger decision quality, higher innovation rates, improved talent retention, enhanced stakeholder trust, and more effective AI integration. than those treating leadership as unchanged or treating AI as purely technical. The clarification AI forces is uncomfortable but ultimately liberating. Leadership has never been primarily about knowing more, controlling tighter, or processing faster. It has always been about creating conditions where humans can do meaningful work together. Navigating complexity with judgment machines cannot replicate. And ensuring organizational action serves purposes worth pursuing. AI makes that truth impossible to ignore. Organizations that embrace it position themselves to thrive. Those that resist it risk becoming precisely what they fear: mechanized, purposeless, and ultimately obsolete.